20+ years ago, a group of SMA residents started producing interviews, documenting what life was like when the first expats arrived to settle here, starting with Sterling Dickinson in the mid-30s, regarding what brought them here and how life was back then. These people, many of whom still live here, were amongst those who started San Miguel's charitable organizations, art schools, music festivals, and theater groups. Now our group is resurrecting this project to ensure these and new archives are preserved and available for anyone interested through our YouTube channel. Working along with the Biblioteca, we've held 3 live discussions in the Santa Ana Theater with longtime SMA residents. There's a basket at the entrance where you can make donations today. For any contributions on other days, please reach out to our project manager, Diane Largman, via email at largman2ygmail.com. Your support is crucial to our project's success, and we appreciate any form of assistance, be it through tickets or donations.
The Instituto Allende was founded in 1950 and soon became a formal part of the University of Guanajuato, offering degrees in fine arts while gaining international recognition. By 1960, it had grown in both size and scope, and also offered a bachelor's degree program in fine arts. During the period from the 1950s to the 1970s, the Instituto attracted hundreds of students from Canada and the United States. Popular with Beat Generation writers like Jack Kerouac and Neil Cassidy, the New York Herald Tribune published an article that praised the Institute, the low cost of living, and the diversity of the students, making a point of saying, "There is nothing bohemian about the Instituto's group." Today, the Instituto continues to offer a bachelor's degree in visual arts through the University of Guanajuato. Art workshops and classes in weaving, jewelry, sculpture, painting, and printmaking are taught by nationally and internationally renowned teachers and are available to the general public. In addition to art classes, the Instituto also offers group and private Spanish classes as a second language.
I'm going to begin by introducing or allowing you to introduce yourself, your name, pass it down.
Don Patterson.
Nancy Slight.
Don Patterson.
Barbara Vidargus.
Oh, that Daniel Ruffert. Listen, we're going to start and use our microphones. They've given you their names, but we don't know anything about what they've been doing, what they did at the Instituto. So I'm going to start with the question, and they'll all be able to participate. How did you come to San Miguel? Did you know someone here? Yes.
Well, why I came to San Miguel? It's because my therapist told me I had to get out of town. No, this is true. And I also wanted to study bronze casting. So I came to San Miguel to study bronze casting with a German called Lothar Kessenbach.
Yes.
So that was my 2 reasons for coming.
In what year?
1970, late May.
Actually, I arrived in San Miguel at the end of 1975. And the reason I came was because they offered an MFA at the Instituto. And I had already gotten a master's in art education, but I wanted the MFA. So with a friend, we drove down in a van, arrived sort of late in the evening, entered town, didn't know where I was, knew no one, didn't even know where the Instituto was, and ended up, we were in a van, so we were camping out, and we camped out that night at Fabrica Aurora, which was still then a Manta factory, and then found my way to Bougainvillea, found a place to stay, found the Instituto, and life went on. I stayed officially until 1987, and then couldn't leave San Miguel, so ultimately bought a house here, came back, and have loved San Miguel ever since.
I was hitchhiking down the road, and a guy picked me up, and sooner or later on the trip, asked me if I had heard of San Miguel de Allende, that there was that it was an art colony. And I always wanted to see what an art colony looked like. And he was afraid to come down here by himself. So I came down here, I got a ride hitchhiking down here. In 1969, sorry.
I was going to Florida Atlantic University, and my friend Gloria Ann and I were walking about the art department and saw a poster that said 6 weeks, 12 credits, San Miguel Allende. And we said, sure. And so we came, and that was the first of 2 summers studying at the Instituto in 76 and 77. Is it working?
It's working.
Oh,
You just gotta talk loud.
okay.
Okay, now we're gonna ask, you mentioned you were a student at the Instituto.
Yes.
We're gonna ask what you were doing there and what years you spent there, what you were teaching. We have 3 instructors here who have changed the course of many people's lives from being great instructors, and I know you were being a student, kind of changed the course of your life, which we'll get to shortly.
I was studying photography with George Condoris, an extension of our program at Florida Atlantic. Our professor in Florida, we had a good relationship with the Instituto, so he brought groups here every summer. So photography is primarily what I did, but I gave it a shot at other art forms and wasn't terribly good at them. But I studied silverwork, where I met a really good friend who introduced me to my husband. I took Spanish, and I don't think I did any other art things.
You have a famous last name, though.
I do.
And
Well,
you married a...
I'm married in.
Okay. I came as a student on the GI Bill. I went to the Bellas Artes first and studied sculpture with Lothar Kestenbaum, and batik with who was it? Anyway, Kent Bowman. There we go. And I just bought a Kent Bowman batik, by the way. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. And then I started at the Instituto on the GI Bill. The United States Army paid my way, and then through hook and crook, Nell hired me to teach there back in 1980. So I taught painting with pastel because that's what I knew how to do.
When I came to the Instituto, I started my first semester, and there was a woman teaching named Rose. She was Hungarian, but came down from Canada, and another fellow named Tom, and he was from Michigan, and they were teaching the ceramics program, which is what I wanted to study. And they were both on sabbaticals and ended up leaving at the end of that first semester. So since I already had a master's, I qualified to be able to teach. I was 25 years old and gung-ho to teach ceramics, and a little bit scared because everybody in the class seemed to be older than I was. And I started teaching and ran the ceramics program. Bill Braun was also teaching at that time, and I had to go and have an interview with Sterling Dickinson to see if I qualified to be able to teach here. And of course, Sterling being Sterling, was just a gentleman and a scholar. And next thing I knew, I was second semester running the ceramics program and taught primitive pottery, ceramics too, and we ended up having to revamp the ceramics program because we had sort of inherited from Al Levy, and he had organized the ceramics program. It was a beautiful studio, but Rose and Tom had decided to change it over to a higher temperature program than the low temperature that was common in and around Mexico. And there was a problem with the kiln, there was a problem with the clay, there was a problem with the glazes. Everything was a little bit questionable that first semester. So by the time I inherited it, we had to start investigating and figure out ways to improve it. One of the things we did was we would go out into the hills in Guanajuato and dig our clay. And outside of the ceramics facility, there were these various vats. And with the help of Antonio, who was our kind of gardener slash clay maker, we put together a formula and revamped the clay. And then we had to rebuild the kilns, and we did that. And with the help of students and also with the help of Nell, we were able to get the supplies that we needed out of Mexico City and put together the program that then continued on. I ended up teaching at the facility at the Instituto till 1982. And then at that point, the Instituto changed its organization a little bit, and we were no longer a paid faculty, but you could be paid depending on the number of students you had. And I had already started to set up a studio on Aparicio, and Nell would recommend my class to her students that were enrolled at the Instituto for ceramics, so I kind of was like a facility out off of the campus until I left in 1987.
In 1970, I enrolled at the Instituto to get my MFA. But my real concern was for my business in the States, because I was a school marker. I taught in public education, and that was my job. But my business was liturgical sculpture, which is kind of rare. But over the course of several years, I amassed a pretty large amount of money, and so I wasn't worried about the economic problems. But the psychologist told me to get out of town because of an accident I had where my wife was killed. And I blacked out, but that's another story. But what caused it were the sirens. So my therapist said, you need to get out of the big city where there are no sirens of ambulances or police cars. And at the same time, I was at a party at the Southern Colorado University in Pueblo. And the head of the art department knew what I was doing, and I had mentioned that I was not getting all the jobs I could because I didn't know how to work with metal, and especially bronze casting. I don't know if you know anything about liturgical art. There's not many people that do. But there's such things as missal stands and candelabras and the covers for baptismal founts. And I just worked in wood to that point. And so I crossed the border with $48,000 when I came to San Miguel. I wasn't hitchhiking like poor Danny over here. But it meant several things. First of all, I didn't have to worry about my tuition. And boy, did I have a good time that first year. You know, I came from a very poor rural community in Illinois on the Mississippi River, and I tell everybody I was born with dirt under my fingernails. And it's still true today. I couldn't get them clean if it was needed. But anyway, I attended the classes until 1972, and then I was asked if I would like to teach life drawing and painting at first. And so that's what I did for several years, well, 2 years. And then in 1974, by just a quirk accident, I, along with a friend, spotted ceramic and bones coming out of a pit that they were digging behind the chapel for a water storage pit. And when I climbed down in it, I found immediately that this was pre-Hispanic. So I immediately got in the car with my friend. We drove out to the country club where Nell Fernandez was playing golf. So I walked around behind her until I saw her make a really good drive. And then I went up and asked her for permission to contact the National Institute of Anthropology and History, which she gave me. And I went back and talked to Sterling, and he put me on the phone to Chavez Morado. I don't know if you know who he is, for his murals in Guanajuato, and with his brother, the Tower of Rain at the National Museum of Anthropology and History. Well, anyway, he sent over an archaeologist, and we started an excavation. That ended in a museum. And it was the first site museum. Matter of fact, it was the first house that had been excavated in the municipality of San Miguel. And so that made me interested in other things. But while I was there, I got the chance to study with some great people. A Yugoslavian by the name of Jim Pinto, whose history was just this Jewish man and his wife that saw her parents hung when the Nazis took over Yugoslavia. Came back to got away, got to the States, joined the army, fought in the South Pacific, and came back and worked for Disney. Not as a cartoonist, but as an artist. And he was one of my instructors. And there's so many of them with their own stories that I'm not going to spend the time tonight. But I was really impressed. And you can't have the microphone yet. I'm not finished. But anyway, I do want to say something about Nell Fernandez. She was an inspiration to me because she was honest. She had integrity. She never lied. Not to me anyway, maybe to Jaime, but not to me. Kept her promises. Showed respect and compassion. And I can't think of many more characteristics that would ennoble anyone. And so, thank you, Nell Fernandez. And I'll pass it over to Camie over here before she hits me.
That was beautiful. Everybody has given us an idea of how the Instituto and its values changed their life, and that's the next question. How do you find the Instituto Allende still being a part or affecting your life today after you were there as instructors and students in the 1970s? And anyone can talk for 15 minutes, but then I'm going to make them stop.
Don.
Shall I? Okay. Well, my time's running out, so I better get started. All right. Geez. While I was an instructor there, and because of the excavation, I had a transformation. Because I had a great curiosity of who these people left their bones and their pottery below the floors of their house. And so, as I started to look through archaeology and Mesoamerican books and history, I said, man, I could draw better than this. And so, I got on the phone and talked to a man at Yale, Dr. Michael Coe, who was a great Mayanist in Mesoamerica, and said I was looking for a job, and he told me he already had an artist for his Maya Scribe, the book he was working on at the time. And I told him essentially a lie at the time. I said, well, I have enough manpower to give you 4,000 hours of work a month. He said, let me get on the phone and I'll call the Foundation for Latin American Anthropological Research. And so I immediately went in and talked to Barbara, who's Jaime's stepsister over there, and said, let's take students to the rainforest and work on archaeological sites. And Nell blessed the project. As a matter of fact, she'd been helping so much. I went to her and I said, Doña, we've got this great excavation. Let's make a museum. And I said, I'll go around the town looking for money and to make donations to build it. And she looked at me with kind of a smile, you know, kind of patronizing, and said, well, I'll tell you what, Don. The first money you get from anybody out of this community that will invest in this project on my property, I'll build the whole thing. And I pulled the check out of my pocket for $500, and I remember her pulling her glasses down. And she said, Don, you sucked me in. And I wanted to tell her, no, she did it to herself, but I respected her too much for that. So anyway, where was I going? Because
Thank you. You're going to give the microphone to Nancy.
No, I'm not.
Oh,
Let me tell you where I went.
Just check.
How it influenced the rest of my life.
Yes.
Because I started taking these students first to Guatemala and then to Chiapas at different archaeological places. And it just changed my life. It got to the point where art, the word art to me is a verb. It's not a noun. Art is the process. The painting, the sculpture of Danny's or his painting, they're a product. As music or writing. The art is the process. And believe me, it comes from the Old English. Thou art. Meaning to be. So this new career to me was had big changes in my life because of the Instituto. And it was through the Instituto and their acknowledgement in the educational system at the time, I was able to land work. And finally ended up working for the National Institute of Anthropology and History and having the second largest project in the whole nation at one point. And I'm very pleased with it. I had a great life. I married a great Mexican lady. It was the best decision of my life. Actually, it was the last decision of my life.
You know, I think coming to Mexico, particularly to San Miguel, has a major impact on your life just because you're exposed to so many different people and the creativity of the town. And also, the other people I was teaching with, the students that I had, all had an impact on my life. One of my favorite things was to take my ceramics class out to just a local potter named Juan Ramirez. He was out by the plaza, and he was making simple ceramic bowls with designs on them that actually went back to sort of the Spanish era. And he would fire them in a little Spanish adobe kiln, fire it with brush, and he would demonstrate to the students how to make these beautiful pieces. So I used to take my students around wherever I could to the Loras Hidalgo or to Michoacan and take them to visit, you know, other places where the artisanía of Mexico could be shown off. Phone art at that point had started, and there were several museum stores all around Mexico where you could find out the best artisanía of Mexico. So on any time I had a chance to travel, I would dedicate it to going and finding these remote places where ceramics was made. I guess, you know, that passion just took over. And Mexico, between its archaeology, in fact, I even took a class with Don years ago in helping him glue back together a few ceramic vases. And, you know, I think coming to San Miguel gave me a chance to grow as a person and as a professional, because of the fact that I had to investigate so many things about ceramics. I had to learn new things, new ways, and ultimately it led to getting hired at the University of Texas in Brownsville and a 25-year teaching career teaching the ceramics program there. So I thank San Miguel for that kind of growing up period.
Well, I told you I was hitchhiking down the road. What I left out was that I was running from the law in Alabama. So, mind you, when I crossed that border, my life was pretty much over. And somehow or other, through it all, I went to school at the Instituto on the GI Bill and came out an artist. They trained me how to be an artist. And I've been here that whole time making a living as an artist. And Nancy taught me how to throw a bowl. And I ran into Don in the Jardín in Oaxaca City one time. He owed me $80 and I tried to get it from him. I got a book. It's a really good book and I recommend it highly if you can find it anywhere. Well, it's been out of print for a while. But yeah, no, the Instituto had, still, I was just so sorry that the Instituto broke up when it did. And I have high hopes. In fact, listen to this thing, made me think it might get back together again. So anyway, I might be drawing inferences that weren't there, but I would certainly love to see that, the Instituto Allende come back to life.
Tell us about your gallery space on Sollano Street.
I do have a gallery on Sollano, 15 Sollano. It's called Gallery 15, and it's pretty much all my work. And, let's see, I have a show coming up in La Manzanilla, Jalisco on the 12th of January. And I have a show coming up here at the Casa Europea on February 1. So if you're still in town and you're around, or you can go into the gallery here and see everything there is to see.
Thank you, Dan. You recognize the love Daniel has for this land in his shadow, in the colors, in the plain air work that he produces, that he learned to do at the Instituto Allende and beyond. And Barbara.
Attending making the move to come and study at the Instituto changed my life, definitely. A mutual friend, a childhood friend of my husband and siblings, Leda Arias, was a friend in a class and asked my friend and I to go to a luncheon with her. Meanwhile, I'm taking photography all over town and studying and all of hard work. She said, would you please go to this luncheon with me? Because I don't want to go by myself. And we said, it's Sunday morning, last night was Saturday night. But she talked us into it, and so we went, and it happened to be my mother-in-law's house. And she was saying, oh, their great son, an architect, so handsome, is back from traveling, and the party is for him. And so we met, and we got married here in San Miguel. One of our children was born in Mexico City, and one of them was born in Chicago. And we pretty much raised our family in Chicago, but now we're back. We've been back every year and love it, and I became part of a wonderful family. And we are now living here permanently for the last 3 years.
Thank you. What a life-changing situation to go to a party and fall in love with one of the elegant bachelors of one of the grandest families. I think that's wonderful, Nancy. The next question has to do with what was social life like here at the time. Does anyone have an opinion up here at the table?
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Daniel? Daniel?
I didn't say that. I used to drink a lot. I don't drink anymore, but I think everybody at the Instituto used to spend their evenings drinking. There was the cucaracha, and the fragua, and the princesa, and there were so many places to drink. I suppose they're still there.
They might still be there.
They must still be there, but I don't go anymore.
What about discos?
Nancy, what?
Discos. I was always too drunk to go to the disco. Because I started early, I was bad. There was Pancho and Lefties, and
I'll tell you what, all you had to do any day of the week was to go into the Instituto Allende coffee shop and find out where the party was that night.
Or was it the party?
And it moved all over town. Actually, there were two kinds of parties. The one that Danny's talking about, where everybody gets drunk and starts speaking very loud in your ear.
And
then there
Spanish.
was another party where everybody was stoned and didn't talk. It was like they all sit around like this, you know. And so my wife would go to that party till we got bored, and then we'd head and we'd find out that we got there too late because everybody was drunk. So we'd end up going home. Yeah, it was a party every night. That's all I can tell you. And by the way, I spent $46,000 that first year. I had a great time, not just in San Miguel, but all over Mexico.
Here we go. More on the party scene. You've got notes. You have written notes.
Well, all you had to do was go sit in the Jardín, and then something would happen. But also there would be a group of students from the Instituto, and we would go down the street to a then disco, which was popular, called Laberintos. And we spent many a Thursday night, Friday night, just dancing. If it wasn't the Laberintos, the Ring opened up. And that became, you know, with the mirror ball and just great, great music, all disco, and everybody had a wonderful time. But also there were fun places to go and eat. And I have to actually credit La Fragua for learning Spanish. In addition to a Spanish 1 class I took with Barbara Doboganes, I learned Spanish by sitting at La Fragua, listening to all the Mexican jokes. And I'll tell you, Rafa was the kind of the king of the Fragua. He sat there with his white hair in his chair, and everybody kind of, you know, came in and bowed to Rafa. Of course, I found out later the reason they did that was because Rafa was running a tab for everybody, and you had to make it known that you were there to get on the tab. And then, of course, there was Mamma Mia's, and Mamma Mia's kind of gradually evolved. When I first came, it was really just the front room. Then the patio opened in the back, and then the side room opened with a bar, and then there also became a dance floor down below with a balcony that went around, and Mamma Mia's was the place to go. Willie and Lobo used to perform there. This other woman, Jenny from Chicago, would sing Me and Bobby McGee, and everybody just loved it. Then we all moved over to Hoja Seca, and in addition to looking at all the postcards of the owner of Hoja Seca, who had not been there for years, but used to send postcards with his picture next to the Queen of England or in the company of the Pope. His little face was glued onto those postcards and sent back to his wife. And there was always, you know, fun places to go, eat, socialize, but really the Jardín was the gathering place. You know, if you needed to find entertainment, just sit there for 5 minutes and somebody would come along and then you'd be off to doing something. So San Miguel has always attracted new and different people. It seemed like every semester there'd be a new group of people in town, people who would come for a month. Some people were here for a couple of years. Some people stayed forever. And, you know, San Miguel has been kind of a home to so many that there's so many different stories and so many different aspects.
Thank you, Nancy.
I just want to say that once while I was crossing the border, going into America, I had an ounce of marijuana in my sock. And the border guard was this nice lady, and she asked me where I was from, and I said, San Miguel de Allende. And she said, oh, do you know Nancy Slight? And I said, why, yes, I do. She taught me how to throw a bowl. And she let me go right on through. I thought that was pretty nice of her. You saved me that time. But as far as fun back in those days, yeah, I do remember waking up with a couple of skulls on my dresser one morning. Because back in those days, I don't know if it's still true, back in those days, after 5 years, they would dig up your bones from if you were a pauper, they would dig up your casket and bones and throw them off in the corner. And not many people knew that, but somebody did, and they took me in there at night, a little bit under the influence, and I wound up with these 3 skulls on my dresser, on my shelf. I didn't know what to do with them, so I did paintings of them. And that way, I had an excuse for having them, I guess. But I was living in Neil Cassidy's house at the time.
I think Don should have checked that out as the anthropologist.
Well, I think they were newer than that, but they didn't still have skin or anything. But I was living in Neil Cassidy's house at the time. Neil Cassidy was one of the characters from On the Road, the book by Jack Kerouac. The Beatnik. And he lived at number 15 Beneficencia, upstairs. There was a nice little place there, a beautiful little one-man apartment that you could, poop, shower, and shave at the same time. The bathroom was that small. Too much information? Might be. Anyway, and it had a hot water heater, and the kitchen, you could touch all 4 walls at the same time. It was a nice little place. But that was when I started the Instituto. And then shortly after, I guess I got, I got kicked out of San Miguel, yeah. For just a little while until they forgot what I looked like. And then I came back, and I better pass this over.
Can you please give some questions to our panelists about their life, or give a comment about something that you'd like to make known about time at the Instituto? Okay, is there a question?
Yes, hi, Andy Rendon.
And your name?
Andy Rendon.
Hi, Andy.
I just completed my first semester at the Instituto.
Yay.
So your stories are really fabulous. And I think, for different reasons, for some reason we find this place. For various reasons we find this place. I'm a new veteran, I retired last year. But I'm very interested in I think a lot of our young veterans would, for much the same reason this place existed, or the program existed after World War II. I think a lot of our young veterans can benefit from the Instituto as well. So, do y'all have recommendations on how, based off all your experience, your time in San Miguel, your beautiful lives that you're living, what recommendations do you have how we can better communicate the Instituto and what it can do for our young veterans?
Maybe Camie could answer.
Yeah, that would be, I'm not even sure what, that would be up to Jaime to answer, because I'm not sure what the Instituto, it's like a wedding.
Daniel Roofer, do, re, mi. Yes.
What's that?
We're saying we have the nice subject about the Instituto Allende right now.
Well,
Not weddings.
well, no, but it's a wedding center. People come to get married there.
No, it's still, the Instituto's still going on, there's still veterans there, there's probably about 12 of us right now. The program still exists. It's going on.
And are you getting the GI Bill?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
That's great to know.
Jeez.
Saludos to
They
the
should have
Instituto.
They should have had somebody from the current Instituto Allende up here.
Where does someone go today if they come to San Miguel and want to study clay?
Occasionally I give a class, but actually there are several people in town here. Blanca Garcia has a wonderful studio up in the top side of town, in La Luz, I believe. And then there's also Barrow.com that's down in San Antonio, another place, and several other people around town. Because of the fact that clay is such a universal material, there are many people in town here that will come, and even just head out into the campo and work with the clay that they dig up. So thank you.
Did you have another question?
Yeah, I'd like to hear some more about what happened with the GI Bill, because I read that there was a period where the U.S. government rescinded it because they considered this a hotbed of communism. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, the rumor was that Tom Scott wrote a letter to the Veterans Administration and complained about the way they were treating their veterans. I just know I showed up at the office one day for my last check, my last GI Bill check, and they said that I would no longer be able to study there because the GI Bill had run out, and I felt terrible about it, but because I always wanted to be an art student for the rest of my life. I found art student was the way to go.
Well, I think what you were referring to was right after World War II, Bellas Artes received the GI Bill. But in that process, over time, there was a famous artist, a muralist, Siqueiros. You've heard of him? And he was painting a mural at Bellas Artes at the time. And by the way, Pinto and Sterling and Kent Bowman, all of the people that worked at the Instituto were teaching at Bellas Artes at that time. This is before the Instituto was founded. And the director of Bellas Artes saw how much money was coming in of these veterans and a whole beat generation that had certain affinity with this famous muralist, Mexican muralist. And so he went to Siqueiros and told him, frankly, listen, I'm going to regulate the time of day and the number of days you can paint this mural. Well, could you imagine telling a famous muralist he could only paint on his work, because what the director wanted was to keep that GI Bill coming in, and this guy was famous. And there was a tussle, and I've been told by both Sterling and Pinto that Siqueiros shoved him down the steps. And then he went around to all the teachers looking for support for him, and they supported Siqueiros. So the director at that time got a hold of his political friends, and they deported all of those foreign teachers there, Kent Bowman, the Canadian Brooks, Leonard, Sterling, Pinto. I have photos of all this. Matter of fact, I interviewed both Sterling and Pinto for their whole reason for being in San Miguel, actually. And the reasons are different, but they went through the same experiences. And this is what I was told, and I have it on tape, by the way. Plus I have copies of the telegrams from Siqueiros to generals trying to get them back into Mexico, because they were deported in what they called back then a sabadazo, a Saturday. That's because there were no government offices open, there was nobody around to give them any help. So they sent in the rurales, which is those soldiers. They don't have them anymore, I don't think. They used to be dressed in gray and had the bandoleros of shells across their chests. And they put them on the train and deported them. And I have photos of them in the hotel room in El Paso, Texas. But Siqueiros got them back in. So they started teaching over the I don't know if it's still there, but in my days it was a cantina called the Gato Negro. There on the corner. And then Enrique, the father of the governor and the father of Jaime, and his wife Nell bought the property and started the Instituto with Sterling. That was next. But during that process, Time Life came after Sterling Dickinson and wrote a story that the plot to assassinate Trotsky had been made in Sterling's home. They followed him into Chiapas, and I don't know if you know anything about Sterling, but he he was an orchidologist. I remember taking orchid bulbs across the border in winter for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But they caught him down there, made him mad. He went back to Chicago and hired his father's law firm, and they descended on Washington, D.C. After the trial, Shirley bragged to me that he was the only card-carrying non-communist in the States at the time. But he took that reprieve and sued Time Life. Now, what an amazing man to do this, right? He's by himself. And he wins. So he takes the check, covers up the amount, makes photostatic copies of it, and sends it to all the syndicated newspapers in the United States that carried the story that the assassination Trotsky had been made in his home. Right? Well, all of a sudden, that was a big help to Nell and Enrique Fernandez. I'll tell you right then, it was a great propaganda tool. And that's when everything changed from the beatnik generation to the hippie generation, if you will. But that's what happened. They took away the GI Bill because of the association, not at the Instituto, but at Bellas Artes.
We have right now around 17 veterans studying with us.
No kidding, wow.
17 veterans. And we have, we offer also the bachelor's degree in visual arts, and we have 60 Mexican students studying the bachelor's degree in visual arts. And we also offer several workshops open to the community, art workshops mainly, weaving, ceramics, acrylic and watercolor painting, printmaking, and also Spanish, of course, open to the community besides the full immersion program that we offer for the veterans. And the veterans study either art or Spanish with us. So everybody's welcome to visit us at the school. Thank you.
Thank you so much to hear. Thank you. This is a nice transition to be able to introduce the project director of the Archives Project, Diane Largeman, who works so hard to bring this to us, along with Miguel and others behind the scenes, for her to give us a bit of, Diane, I need you to come up here into the light.
I was introduced to this project in, I think around 91 or 92, and I came from a production background in Philadelphia. And Sue Beer was one of the original people. I somehow think he got me to the house to see all this stuff. And all these things, there's a story about it, I think, in your program, were on tape. And I knew if we left it on tape, it would erode. And a bunch of us, Dennis, who's on the camera up there, myself, and a dear friend who passed away about a month and a half ago, Pam Knowles, started interviewing new people. The stories that you hear just make you love the city more and realize what special people that we have here. One of the things, and I think it's my fault, is we never really publicize this project that much. Because we have a very small budget. You know, the only thing we do, our only money-making events, how we make money is through these small events. And we've had one wonderful, wonderful woman who has donated, who doesn't want to be named. The thing that we need, or I need, I have to say, because Pam Knowles, who was who I worked with, she was the one she was the detail person. I could say, let's do this, but I didn't know how to get there. And Pam was the one who helped me do that. And I need help getting, because I'm not an organized individual, getting things organized. And if any of you are interested, please let me know, okay? Also, if you have ideas of different programs that we can do, we'd love to do it. This is our fourth live interview. I think they've all been extremely successful. You know, we all learned so much. I did, you know, listening to the people today about what, you know, happened years ago. We're going to be having two more. We're going to be dealing with bicultural issues. And we're just going to sit at a bar and give people drinks and let them talk. It should be really interesting, yeah.
I'll be there.
If you are interested, one of the things you should do is go on YouTube. It's real easy.
you know, San Miguel Archive Project, YouTube, and there are about 80 interviews on it. Some of them were fantastic, some of them was very boring. But the whole point of this thing is that all this material will be available to anybody who wants to use it. Somebody wants to make a documentary, learn about another person. You can find all that information on, you know, our website, our YouTube site. There's a basket that you walk out, it says thank you, gracias, gracias. Because every little bit helps, you know, you really need to help. And just hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much. Don I'd never met before, I'd heard about him for years. I know your daughter from tennis, yeah. And Nancy and Danny and Barbara are all dear friends, and we sit around evenings sometimes and just talk about this. And I don't envy people much, but I do envy the people who have been here, you know, longer than I have, and the lives that they've led. I think we're just so very, very lucky to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.